Chainsaw Man chapter 157 showed us that the more things change, the more they really stay the same. Last week, you guys joined me in hoping that Reze was standing outside the Devil Extermination Center, but knowing deep down in your heart that it was Yoru. And in this chapter, we learned that not only is this true, but Yoru and Mitaka have been getting some major power-ups. However, while that might be the change that we all expected, the thing that stays the same is that Mitaka is still just as every bit the klutz that she is, and her having her two left feet show itself at the wrong possible moment is more proof that she's got that contract with the Tripping Devil. However, jokes aside though, let's back things up and let's unpack the chapter itself. So we open up where the last chapter left off, and we see that it's actually both Asa, Mitaka, and Fami standing outside the facility. Now this was a pleasant surprise because I was not expecting to see Fami pull up beside Mitaka, but in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense. Just given that while the last time we did see Yoru, she was going on and on about how she can feel her powers returning to her, and Mitaka did lose her arm against Yoshida, which I do believe that does mean that there's going to be a receipt coming at some point where Mitaka and Yoru take an arm from Yoshida at the least, because the narrative is speeding things up on a treadmill for what's likely going to be Yoshida versus Yoru in a rematch. It's then that we see Fami checking in on Mitaka, and she's either being sincere or she's planting the seeds to start gaslighting Mitaka in the future, because she asks her, "How's your arm doing? Is it feeling well?" And she reassures Mitaka that them wearing their high school uniform is completely fine, because at the very least they'll be able to throw off some of the suspicion in the process, because the Devil Detention Center does give tours to high school students, which, yikes, that is one hell of a field trip. Back when I was going to school, we would go to the zoo for a field trip. These folks is going to the literal detention center. Like, what? And I will say it does speak volumes to how much things have changed since the end of Chainsaw Man Part 1 and what you see now in Chainsaw Man Part 2. Now this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because while Fami's plan, it is smart, it does have some risk, and it's something that Yoru doesn't directly come out and ask, but even if she has some questions, she keeps them in line and check and focuses more so on asking if Chainsaw Man is really in this building. And what I like about this scene here is that we get a small glimpse into the relationship between Fami and Yoru, because we see some of that sibling banter going on with Fami making Yoru call her Fami instead of Famine, which I thought was a nice touch that anyone who has siblings will likely appreciate. However, their interaction does make me go back to something I've been wondering since the start of Chainsaw Man Part 2. You had a moment really early on where she was in Mitaka's apartment where she hinted at being bullied in hell and said that bullies exist in the devil world. And when we look at her sisters, just look at what you have here. The Death Devil is so bad that Fami is getting her other two sisters to fight alongside her so the three of them can take down the Death Devil. So this is Death Devil is #1 bully on the pecking order. Then the other spots are debatable, but Makima, for instance, was a savage and a gaslighter, and Nayuta isn't necessarily an angel herself. I don't think anyone doubts that Makima might have bullied Yoru in the past, and Nayuta didn't hesitate to shoot those control chains into Yoru when she caught her kissing Denji. Then you got Fami, who doesn't get right in your face, but she's one of the ones you have to keep your eyes on, because she'll smile in your face and she'll be actually doing something savage and gaslighting behind your back. And it's something that when you really add it all up, I do think that we're going to get something revealed with Fami moving forward. And the way that she handled Yoru in this chapter, it definitely makes you raise an eyebrow. Now moving onward though, we see the switching back and forth between Mitaka and Yoru take place multiple times in this chapter. And what's interesting here is that Mitaka says in her internal monologue that she wants to save Chainsaw Man this time, but we as readers know it's not as simple as Red Chainsaw Man and Black Chainsaw Man, i.e. Denji and Pochita. And when they go to find Denji, they're gonna have to have a very real conversation about what they're going to do. And it's worth keeping your eyes on how they interact now, because in the past, whenever Mitaka was thinking something, Yoru knew as well, because they share the same body. So she heard Mitaka's desires just now, and you gotta believe that when the whole truth about Red Chainsaw Man and Black Chainsaw Man comes out, these two are gonna be at odds. And really and truly, you gotta feel for Denji, because if you would have told Denji that he was gonna have two women fighting over him, this would not be what he had on his mind. After we see these two guards who watch them on the security feed, with one of them saying, "Hey, just in case they're high school girls, go ahead and gun them down as a precaution," we see firsthand how much Yoru and Mitaka powered up, because they're able to turn things into weapons now without touching them, which going back a few chapters ago was still a condition that was needed. Like when we saw Mitaka turn her apartment into a weapon when she fought Yoshida, which is another reason if you're Yoshida, you're likely gonna have to start preparing for the fight of your life. Mitaka shoots her way into the building by controlling the weapons, and as she's doing so, Yoru and Fami are calling Mitaka naive for buying that story that Fami told her about the weapons, which goes back to it. Fami is #1 gaslighter right now that Makima is gone. As they start making their way through the building, one of the men recognizes Mitaka from the Church of Chainsaw, and we see that either Mitaka coming out into the open slaying devils was something that bit her in the butt, or this is all part of Fami's plan in the first place to get her in this situation, which we'll obviously find out soon. However, while public safety's guards are looking for the two of them, Fami lays out her plan to Mitaka concerning the rules of engagement, with her telling her that they won't be able to directly use the weapons in the facility, so all combat moving forward needs to be done directly, and in particular it needs to be Mitaka engaging. Mitaka gives her the side eye, basically saying, wait a second, can't you see I only got one arm? My name's not Sasuke. Why do I need to be the one doing all the fighting? And honestly, what she said makes a lot of sense. Fami is clearly more experienced when it comes to combat, so you would think that it will be Mitaka who will be following her lead, but Fami basically tells her to play her position because Fami is their trump card, and you don't play that trump card right away, which it makes a lot of sense. For instance, if you, me, and a couple other people were sitting at a table and we're playing spades and I got a joker and a couple of aces in my hand, I'm not going to play that joker right away. I'm not going to play those aces right away. I'm going to try and bait the other players to see who has what cards before I play that joker and those aces at the time that works best for me. That being said, I still don't trust Fami at all. This brings us up to the ending, where moments later, after warning her to be cautious, Mitaka falls and she faceplants, which draws attention to the devil hunters, and we end off with Fami calling Mitaka a klutz, and she appears to be going into the next battle, which means trump card might be a play here. Now, I am interested to see more of Asa, Mitaka, and Yoru's powers, how they powered up following the fears of war that has spread. I think we only saw a glimpse of what they can do, but I'm way more curious now to see what Fami's powers in combat are, because she's clearly got something more to in terms of power than what we've seen in the past, because she is being built up as one of the 4 horsewomen. I think it works for Fujimoto though, because he did use that tripping gag of Mitaka in order to make Fami step in to protect her and force her in that situation. She called herself a trump card. So there are seeds being planted here. The only question we have to really ask now is how badly are they about to wreck those poor guys from public safety? Because fighting 2 of the 4 horsewomen, even if one of them is a klutz, that is a very tall task to ask. And like, sure enough, somebody is gonna die. There are gonna be heads that roll, especially when Yoru takes over Mitaka's body. You know that that is coming, because you can't have Mitaka going in there and she's gonna be tripping all over the place. But on a serious note though, I am a little worried about Fujimoto. This was a short chapter. I hope that everything is okay health-wise. I would not be surprised if after next week we get a break. I hope I'm wrong though.